25 years ago, I planted something along my back fence that is still there today. I have tried cardboard, I have tried herbicide, I have tried digging it out 3 times. It comes back every summer like it owns the place. Because at this point, it does. That plant is number 1 on this list. But before we get there, 14 more plants that made the same kind of promise, told the same kind of lie, and cost me the same kind of time, money, and real physical labor to deal with. One of them is on an FDA warning list. One smells like rotting fish. One has an RHS award and a USDA Noxious Weed listing on the same plant simultaneously. Every single one is on the shelf at your nearest garden center right now, and every single one comes with a replacement on this list, because knowing what not to plant is only useful if you know what to plant instead. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. The follow-up to this video is the list of perennials I would plant again without blinking, and you do not want to miss that. And before this video is over, drop one comment, add the perennial you regret most, and tell me which state you're gardening from. I read every single one. Let's count them down, starting at number 15. Number 15, Foxglove. I want to start here because this one doesn't spread. It doesn't invade your neighbor's yard. It doesn't smell offensive or grow through your foundation. The regret with Foxglove is quieter than everything else on this list, and somehow that makes it worse. Because you won't know you've been misled until you're standing in front of an empty bed in year 3, genuinely confused about what happened. Foxglove is sold at practically every garden center as a perennial. The tag says it right there in big letters. 6-foot spires of pink and purple bells that hummingbirds work up and down all afternoon. The catalogue photo is stunning. It sells itself on looks alone. The tag is wrong. Foxglove is a biennial. It has a 2-year life cycle and then it is finished. Year 1, you get a flat rosette of leaves sitting low to the ground. No flowers, nothing that looks like what you paid for. Year 2, the spectacular spires arrive and everything the catalogue promised finally shows up. Year 3, the plant is dead. It bloomed once, finished its life cycle, and checked out permanently. The nursery knows this. The catalogue knows this. Buried in the small print, sometimes you will find the words short-lived perennial. In the gardening trade, short-lived is the polite word for dies. They just don't put that in bold on the front of the tag. If you want Foxglove to feel permanent in your beds, you have to let it self-seed. And the seedlings won't bloom for another 2 years. So you plant in 2025, see the magazine flowers in 2026, stare at empty soil in 2027, and hope seedlings fill in by 2028. That is not a perennial. That is a 3-year project with a 1-season payoff. What to plant instead? Tall garden phlox. 6-week bloom window in summer, comes back reliably every year. Hummingbirds and butterflies love it, and it is a genuine perennial that will still be in your garden in 15 years. Read the small print on the tag. That is where the truth always lives. Number 14, Hollyhocks. Same trap as Foxglove, different plant. Bonus regret included at no extra charge. Hollyhocks are the 8-foot fairy tale spires every grandmother had against the back fence. Tagged as perennial. Behave as biennial. Year 1, a flat rosette of leaves doing nothing impressive. Year 2, dramatic flowering spires in pink, white, burgundy and red that look like something out of an English cottage painting. Year 3, gone. But Hollyhocks bring something Foxglove doesn't. Rust. Hollyhock rust is a fungal disease that arrives reliably every single year in most American climates without being invited. By July, the lower 3 feet of foliage are covered in orange-brown pustules on the undersides of every leaf. By August, the plant looks like it survived a brush fire. Flowers still beautiful up top, lower half completely destroyed and dropping. By September, the bed looks like a cautionary tale. Keeping hollyhocks looking presentable means spraying fungicide every 2 weeks from May through September without missing a single application. That is not low-maintenance gardening. That is a part-time summer job with a spray bottle. The honest answer is this. Hollyhocks are worth growing if you go in fully informed. Treat them as biennials deliberately. Accept the rust management as part of the deal. Give them a spot against a fence where the lower third of the plant is not your focal point. Just do not plant them expecting a carefree perennial that holds its corner quietly for 15 years. That is not what you are buying. What to plant instead for that same dramatic vertical presence? Delphinium. Staked, yes, but genuinely perennial, true cottage garden impact, and none of the fungal horror show on the lower leaves every August. Number 13. Russian Sage Blue Spire. This plant defined the American perennial border through the entire 1990s. Every magazine cover, every show garden, every landscape plan had this in it. 4-foot clouds of lavender blue blooming from July through September. Drought-tolerant, deer-resistant, practically indestructible. For the first 2 years, every single word the catalogue says is accurate. Year 3 is when the structure fails, and it fails in a way nobody warned you about. Russian Sage Blue Spire, the original unnamed variety sold by the gallon for $9 at every nursery, develops a splitting habit as it matures. The plant grows outward in a ring. The center dies out completely. You end up with what looks like a 4-foot ratty wreath sitting in your border. Outer canes flopping in every direction, hollow dead center, nothing resembling the tidy lavender mound you bought 3 years earlier. This is not bad soil. This is not bad care. This is a genetic characteristic of the older variety that nobody bothered addressing because it sold perfectly well before gardeners started noticing the problem in year 3. Here is what changed. Newer compact selections, Denim and Lace and Lacy Blue, were bred specifically to eliminate this problem. They hold their shape through year 10. They do not split. They do not develop the donut hole. They look in year 8 like they looked in year 1. If your nursery still sells unnamed Russian sage by the gallon for $9 with no cultivar name on the tag, that is the old splitter. Walk past it. Pay the extra few dollars for the named compact variety. The variety name is everything with this plant. Demand it before you buy. Number 12. Coral Bells Hybrids. Berry smoothie, caramel, marmalade. Every chartreuse, peach and burgundy color a plant breeder could squeeze out of one species. Coral Bells hybrids are the foliage statement plant of the last 2 decades. $15 each, sometimes significantly more, and the color in a nursery pot is genuinely stunning. Here is what the person at the register never tells you. Hybrid Coral Bells doesn't grow downward the way most perennials do, it grows upward. Every single year the crown lifts a little higher out of the soil. By year 3 the entire root mass is sitting partially above ground, exposed to winter air. When the freeze-thaw cycles hit in late February and March, the plant physically pushes itself the rest of the way out of the soil. The technical term is frost heaving. In practical terms, it means the plant kills itself with its own growth habit, and you find it half out of the ground in spring wondering what went wrong. Alan Armitage, longtime professor at the University of Georgia and one of the most respected perennial researchers in America, has written about this problem for years. The fancy hybrid Coral Bells are a 3-year plant being sold as a permanent perennial. That is his assessment. I agree with every word of it. The native species form, plain green, no exotic color story. Half the price, usually sitting in plain plastic pots around the back of the nursery, lasts 15 to 20 years without any drama. It stays in the ground. It does not heave. It does not require replacement every 3 years. What to plant instead? The species form. Walk to the back of the nursery. Find the plain pot. Buy the boring one. It will still be there in 2040 when the berry smoothie has been replaced 4 times. Number 11. Fancy echinacea hybrids. Echinacea hybrids. Hot papaya, Cheyenne spirit, cantaloupe. This is the regret with the most institutional data behind it, and the data is not ambiguous. The Mount Cuba Center in Delaware, one of the most rigorous native plant trial gardens in the entire United States, ran a multi-year echinacea evaluation. They planted approximately 75 varieties. Professional horticulturists followed each, one for survival, bloom consistency, and long-term vigor across multiple winters. The final report was published in 2018, and it is on their website right now, free, available to anyone with an internet connection. The results: most of the fancy hybrid coneflowers, the orange, red, yellow, double-flowered, magazine cover varieties, did not survive 3 winters. Some did not survive the first one. Hot papaya, tomato soup, Cheyenne spirit. Gone before year 3 in a controlled trial with professional care and optimal conditions. The plain species coneflower and a small number of straight single-color cultivars were the only consistently long-lived performers across the entire trial. Every spring, Garden centers sell $9 pots of hot papaya. Gardeners buy them, lose them by winter, and buy them again the following April. The garden center makes the sale twice. You make the mistake twice and think it's your fault. What to plant instead? The species coneflower, $6. Boring catalog photo. No exotic color story. Will still be flowering in your garden in 20 years. Mount Cuba published the data. The industry ignored it. Now you know, and you don't have to ignore it. This is a good moment to stop and say something directly to you. Every plant on this list so far has one thing in common. They all sell. They sell because the catalog photo is stunning, the tag promise sounds wonderful, and in April, when nothing else in your yard is alive yet, $9 feels like nothing for something that beautiful. Garden center economics push the showiest and most novelty-driven plants to the front display table because that is what moves out the door fastest. The reliable 20-year perennials are usually around the back in plain pots at half the price, and the catalogue never photographs those because they don't look like a magazine cover in their first season. Trial garden data tells a completely different story than the catalogue does. I learned that 20 years too late. Drop a comment right now. One perennial you've already made this mistake with. Just one plant. I read every comment, and the next video on this channel is being built from your answers in real time. Number 10. Bee balm. Old varieties. Monarda. Cambridge scarlet. Adam. Bee balm is one of the genuinely great native perennials. Hummingbirds work it constantly. Pollinators line up for it. 4 feet of bold color in July. This is not a regret about the plant. This is entirely a regret about the variety, and the difference between getting this right and getting it wrong is the difference between a garden showpiece and a biology experiment by August. Cambridge scarlet. Adam. The older red bee balm varieties bred decades before mildew resistance was even a breeding consideration. Here is what happens every summer with those varieties, without exception, regardless of your soil, your location, or how well you care for them. Mid-July, the lower leaves develop a chalky white film. By August, every leaf on the plant looks like it has been dusted with talcum powder from top to bottom. By September, the plant has dropped most of its leaves entirely and is standing as a 4-foot bare stick with a handful of tired red flowers clinging to the top. The flowers are still technically there. The plant looks like it lost a serious argument with a fungus. Because it did. This is not a problem you can spray your way out of. Powdery mildew on susceptible bee balm varieties is a genetic inevitability baked into the plant's DNA. It was never bred to resist it. Jacob Klein, released in the 1980s, is genetically resistant to powdery mildew. Same bold red flower, same hummingbird draw, same native credentials. Leaves stay clean and green through September without intervention. Marshall's Delight and Raspberry Wine are 2 other named mildew-resistant varieties worth planting. The rule is non-negotiable. If the tag says bee balm with no variety name listed, leave it on the rack. The variety name is the only guarantee you are not buying a plant that looks diseased by midsummer every year for the rest of its life. Named cultivar or walk away. That is the whole lesson. Number 9. Creeping Jenny. This one gets planted by well-meaning gardeners every single spring because the catalogue calls it a gentle, low-growing ground cover, perfect for filling gaps between stepping stones or softening the edges of container plantings. The golden-leafed variety, in particular, photographs beautifully. Lime green to gold, trailing habit, cheerful little yellow flowers. What the catalogue does not mention is the state list it is sitting on. Creeping Jenny is classified as invasive or a species of concern in multiple states across the Midwest and Northeast, including Wisconsin, Minnesota, and parts of New England. It spreads by both rooting stems and underground runners, and in moist soil, which is most garden beds, it moves faster than the catalogue photos suggest it ever could. By year 2, it is outside the stepping stones. By year 3, it is into the lawn and climbing the base of neighboring perennials. In naturalized areas near water, it has been documented displacing native vegetation along stream banks and pond edges. The maddening part is that it looks so harmless. It doesn't get tall, it doesn't make a dramatic statement. It just quietly moves in every direction at once until one day you look down and realize it is everywhere. What to plant instead? Native creeping phlox for a low ground cover with actual flower power, or golden groundsel for a shade-tolerant native spreader that supports pollinators and actually belongs in the ecosystem it's growing in. Number 8. Obedient plant. The name is a complete lie. I want to be absolutely clear about that before we go any further. Here is where the name actually comes from. The individual flowers along the spike, if you push them sideways with your finger, stay exactly where you push them. You can rearrange each flower like a bead on a stem, and it holds the position. Someone found that charming and named the entire plant Obedient, based on a flower trick. The underground roots have never once in the history of this plant behaved obediently. Obedient plant is a North American native, 4-foot pink flower spikes in late summer. Genuinely beautiful in a cottage garden border. It sells consistently because it photographs well, and the native plant label makes gardeners feel virtuous buying it. By year 3, you do not have one obedient plant. You have a 4-foot patch of obedient plant. By year 5, you have a 15-foot colony, and it is coming up between your peony and your roses, and in the lawn along the border edge, and probably in a location you specifically did not intend. Multiple university extension services across the Midwest and Northeast describe it as aggressive in moist garden soil, which describes most cultivated garden beds across most of America. There is a named variety called Miss Manners marketed as less aggressive. I want to be honest with you about Miss Manners. She still spreads. More politely, but she spreads. What to plant instead? Native blazing star, also called liatris. Same late summer native bloom window. Pollinators go absolutely wild for it. Vertical flower spike with real drama. And it stays exactly, permanently, gratefully where you plant it. The name actually means what it says. Number 7. Ribbon grass. This one is a betrayal story, because ribbon grass doesn't look dangerous. It looks elegant. 3 to 4 feet tall, long arching leaves striped in white and green that catch the wind beautifully. The catalogue calls it ornamental, hardy, and low maintenance. All 3 of those things are accurate. The catalogue just leaves out the family history. Ribbon grass is a variegated form of reed canary grass, one of the most serious wetland invasives in the United States. It inherits most of its parents' spreading habits and then gets sold at garden centers under an ornamental name because the white and green stripes make it look like a completely different plant. By year 3, the rhizomes are in the lawn. By year 5, the plant is on your neighbor's property. By year 10, it has been documented crossing under fences into nearby wetland areas where it can revert toward the more aggressive plain green form and outcompete native grasses that have no evolutionary defense against it. It is listed as invasive across multiple Great Lakes and Pacific Northwest states. You paid for a garden ornament. You got reed canary grass in a costume. What to plant instead? Variegated sweet iris or a named compact selection of maiden grass like morning light. Both give you that elegant striped grass movement in the border. Both stay where you plant them. Neither has one of America's worst wetland invasives hiding anywhere in their family tree. Number 6. Mint. I almost didn't include mint on this list because everyone already knows mint spreads, and then I remembered the summer I found mint coming up inside the wall of my raised bed, through the wood, through the liner, through what I had genuinely believed was a physical barrier. And I realized that knowing mint spreads and understanding what mint actually does underground are 2 completely different levels of awareness. Mint spreads by underground rhizomes that travel horizontally through any soil type with a single objective: more mint. It does not slow down at the edge of your herb bed. It does not respect the boundary between beds. It does not stop at the lawn. I have pulled mint rhizomes that ran 8 feet in a perfectly straight line under a stone path to emerge on the other side as if the path did not exist. The problem isn't that mint is bad. Mint is genuinely wonderful. The flavor, the fragrance, the herbal utility, the pollinator value. The problem is that mint planted in open ground is a 10-year commitment to removal that you did not agree to when you paid $3 for that little pot in May. The fix is not complicated, container only. A 12-inch pot with a drainage tray, never placed directly on bare soil. You get every bit of the harvest, every bit of the fragrance, and the rhizomes have nowhere to go except the inside of the pot where they belong. If mint is already in your ground, I am sorry. Cardboard, 6 inches of mulch, 2 full seasons, and even then, you will be pulling stragglers for years. The only complete solution is starting over with a container. A quick pause before we get into the top 5. The 5 plants coming up are the ones that I think about the most. Not because they spread the furthest, though some of them do, but because each one of them carries a specific kind of damage that the catalogue photographs the least and the tag explains the worst. If you have found this useful so far, subscribe right now because the next video, 5 perennials I would plant without hesitation, is already in production. You do not want to miss that one. Number 5, Plume Poppy. This is genuinely one of the most spectacular plants you will ever put in a garden. 8 feet tall, blue-green leaves the size of dinner plates, creamy white flower panicles in July. Architectural drama that nothing else in a perennial border can match. I understand completely and without reservation why people buy this plant. The tag says bold accent plant, back of border. What the tag does not say is that this plant will travel 20 feet underground inside 5 years. By year 3, Plume Poppy is emerging 6 feet away from where you planted it. By year 5, it is in the lawn. By year 7, the rhizomes are tangled through the root zones of every neighbouring plant in the surrounding area, which means you cannot remove the plume poppy without removing everything growing anywhere near it in the process. A friend of mine in Pennsylvania planted 3 of them along a back fence in 2015. By 2021, she had plume poppy emerging through the compacted gravel of her driveway, 25 feet from the original planting. Through compacted gravel. The driveway did not stop it. The fence did not stop it. The neighbouring property line did not stop it. This plant is not wrong. It is simply the wrong scale for almost every residential yard in America. If you have 5 acres or more and a back area, you are genuinely willing to surrender to one plant. Plume poppy is magnificent. If you have under an acre, do not plant it. What to plant instead for that same back-of-border architectural drama? Joe Pye weed. Native, 7 feet tall, spectacular in late summer. Pollinators cover it from August through October, and it stays exactly where you planted it without negotiation. Number 4, Yellow Flag Iris. This one has won awards. Actual horticultural awards. The Royal Horticultural Society gave it an award of garden merit. It is sold at water garden centres, perennial nurseries, and aquatic plant specialists across the country as a beautiful, vigorous, low-maintenance iris for pond edges and moist garden areas. It is also listed by the USDA as a federal noxious weed in multiple states and is prohibited from sale in Oregon, Washington, and several other western states because of the documented damage it causes to native wetland ecosystems. Yellow flag iris spreads by both rhizomes and by prolific seed production. Each seed pod contains multiple seeds that float on water and disperse downstream into natural waterways, wetlands, and riparian areas where the plant forms dense monocultures that crowd out native cattails, sedges, and wetland grasses that wildlife depends on. Once established in a natural waterway, it is extraordinarily difficult to remove without significant mechanical intervention. The award on the catalogue and the federal noxious weed listing exist simultaneously. Both are real. The catalogue shows you one. The USDA shows you the other. If you want iris at a pond edge or in a moist garden area, plant blue flag iris instead. The Native American species that supports the same wildlife, produces the same elegant flower, and does not show up on federal noxious weed lists. Number 3. Houttuynia Chameleon. Heart-shaped leaves splashed with cream, pink, red, and green. Sometimes 4 or 5 colours on a single leaf. In a nursery container under good light, it is one of the most visually striking plants you will ever see. Every shade gardener who walks past it picks one up at least once. I picked one up. I know exactly why you would too. Now go home and crush a leaf. Most people describe the smell as rotting fish. Others say rotten orange peel or warm kerosene. I have never spoken to a single gardener who grew used to it over time. You will make this discovery after it is already planted and rooted in your shade bed, and that smell is not even the main reason it is at number 3. Chameleon spreads by deep underground rhizomes that travel simultaneously in every direction. Removal is harder than mint, harder than goutweed, harder than most things you have ever tried to remove from a garden. The rhizomes break at the lightest touch, and every single fragment left in the soil regenerates into a new plant. Glyphosate, the strongest broad-spectrum herbicide available to most homeowners, barely slows it down at standard application rates. Most reports from gardeners and professional horticulturists agree that complete elimination from an established bed requires total soil excavation. Not digging. Excavation. It is on the prohibited or restricted list in Oregon, Washington, and several other Pacific Northwest jurisdictions. If you are in those states, you cannot legally plant it. If you are outside those states, the legal permission to plant it is not the same thing as horticultural permission. What to plant instead? Lamium white Nancy, variegated silver and green foliage, beautiful in shade, well behaved in a way that chameleon will never be. When you crush a lamium leaf, it smells like nothing except dirt. After this video, that will feel like the highest possible praise. Number 2, common comfrey. The catalogue copy practically writes itself for this plant. Medicinal, hardy, deer-resistant, drought-proof. 2,000 years of European herbal tradition. I bought 3 of them in the spring of my 10th year of gardening because those words were exactly what I wanted to hear. I planted them along the back fence of my herb garden, and I felt like I was doing something serious and intentional. Every single claim on that catalogue page is true. None of them is the most important fact about common comfrey. Here is the most important fact. Common comfrey has a taproot that goes several feet straight down into the soil, as thick as your thumb or thicker, and it regenerates completely from any fragment left in the ground. You cannot dig comfrey out. You can dig the crown out. The taproot sends up fresh shoots within 2 to 3 weeks every single time. By year 3, you have a mother plant and several daughters emerging along the same fence. By year 5, comfrey is between the patio stones, under the foundation edge, and in the lawn. By year 10, most gardeners I have spoken with have stopped fighting it and accepted it as a permanent resident. And then, there is the detail the catalogue absolutely never puts on the page. The US Food and Drug Administration has advised against the internal consumption of comfrey-containing products for over 30 years. Comfrey contains compounds called pyrrolizidine alkaloids, substances linked in published clinical studies to liver damage when consumed orally over time. The plant that the herb catalogue markets as a medicinal tea ingredient is the same plant the FDA says should not be going into your tea. Topical use in salves and creams is generally considered acceptable in the scientific literature. Drinking it is not. The 2,000-year tradition of consuming comfrey internally is, by current medical consensus, an outdated and potentially dangerous practice. The 2,000-year invasive taproot habit, however, is entirely current. If you want comfrey for its genuine soil-building value, the deep leaves make outstanding green mulch and compost material, there is one responsible option. A sterile cultivar called Bocking 14, developed at the Henry Doubleday Research Association in England, does not produce viable seed. Grow it in a container even so. Ground planting of the species form. Do not do it. The catalogue gave you 4 reasons to plant it. The FDA gave you 1 reason that outweighs all 4. Read the back of the bottle. Number 1. Lily of the Valley. I knew this was going to be number 1 before I wrote a single word of this video. Not because it is the most aggressive spreader here, though it is genuinely relentless. Not because it is the hardest to remove, though in 25 years of gardening, I have never fully eliminated it from an established planting. And not because the rhizomes are tough to manage, though they are. It is number 1 because of everything else it is at the same time. It is the prettiest plant on this entire list. 6-inch spikes of nodding white bells in early May. The most heavenly fragrance any perennial produces anywhere in a temperate garden. Blooms in deep shade when almost nothing else will give you anything. Half of you watching this right now grew up with Lily of the Valley in a grandmother's garden, and you have beautiful, specific, irreplaceable memories attached to this plant. I know exactly how that feels. I have those memories too. I planted 6 of them in 1999 along a north-facing foundation. I wanted the fragrance in the morning when I walked out the back door. I wanted the memory of my mother's garden in my own yard. Those feelings are real, and I am not going to pretend otherwise, or talk you out of them. Here is what actually happened after those 6 plants went in the ground. Year 3, 20 plants. Year 5, 60 plants, spreading under the foundation flagstone in both directions. Year 10, Lily of the Valley was emerging through cracks in the front walkway, 12 feet from where I originally planted it. Year 15, the rhizomes had crossed under the driveway and were coming up in the neighbor's yard on the other side. I never told her I was the reason. The rhizomes are thin and white, and they snap apart the instant you try to pull them, and every fragment left in the soil regenerates. Smothering with cardboard for 2 full seasons slows the spread. Nothing I have tried in 25 years of sincere effort has completely eliminated lily of the valley from an established planting. In practical terms, once it is in your ground, it is in your ground permanently. And then there is the part that put it at number 1 over everything else on this list. Lily of the valley is toxic. Every part of it, the leaves, the stems, the flowers, the berries, the water that cut stems, sit in on your kitchen counter. The compounds are cardiac glycosides, the same chemical family as Foxglove. In children and in pets, a single mouthful is a medical emergency. Dogs, cats, small children, 1 flower is a hospital visit. In the spring of 2013, my daughter at 3 years old picked a flower and put it in her mouth while I was 5 feet away, not watching closely enough. We caught it immediately. We were lucky. The outcome in that story depends entirely on how fast you catch it. Some families do not catch it fast enough. Beautiful plant, fragrant plant, permanent plant, toxic plant. That is the complete picture the catalogue photograph never shows you and the tag never fully explains. If you need early May fragrance in a shaded spot and that need is real, grow lily of the valley in a container you never set on bare soil and keep it somewhere children and pets physically cannot access it. Or plant sweet woodruff instead. Similar shade tolerance, small white May flowers, delicate fragrance, genuinely well behaved, stays where you plant it. It is not the same. Nothing produces the same fragrance as lily of the valley, and nothing carries the same memories. But some memories are better kept as memories than recreated as permanent problems in the ground. 15 plants, 1 list, 25 years of learning things the catalogue should have told me the first time I walked through. The nursery gate. Foxglove and hollyhocks labelled perennial and dead by year 3. Coral bells hybrids that push themselves out of the soil and freeze on their own roots. Russian sage Blue Spire splitting open like a donut by year 4. Fancy echinacea hybrids that the Mount Cuba Center proved were gone before their 3rd winter. Bee balm varieties turning white with mildew by August every year without fail. Creeping jenny spreading quietly into waterways on a state invasive list. Obedient plant running 15 feet through a garden bed with its completely ironic name. Ribbon grass with reed canary grass hiding in its DNA. Mint tunneling under stone paths to emerge on the other side. Plume poppy traveling 25 feet through compacted gravel. Yellow flag iris with an RHS award and a USDA Noxious Weed listing on the same plant. Houttuynia that smells like rotting fish and treats glyphosate like a light suggestion. Comfrey with a 30-year FDA, warning the catalogue page never once mentioned. And lily of the valley none. The prettiest mistake I ever made, still in my yard, still beautiful every May, still impossible to remove, still number 1. Here is the one thing I want you to carry out of this video. The catalogue sells you year 1. The trial garden documents year 15. Those are 2 completely different conversations about the same plant, and for most of gardening history, the catalogue is the only one of those 2 conversations that showed up at the point of sale. Mount Cuba Center publishes free trial reports online right now. So does the Chicago Botanic Garden. So does the University of Minnesota Extension Service. These are free, written by researchers who followed plants for years under real conditions. Not by a marketing team trying to move inventory before Mother's Day weekend. Read the trial data before you buy. Ask for the cultivar name on every single plant. Walk past any pot with no variety name listed on the tag. And read the small print, because short-lived perennial means it will die, and naturalizing means it will be absolutely everywhere inside 5 years. 1 comment before you leave, tell me 1 perennial you regret. I read every single comment, and the next regret list on this channel is being built entirely from your answers right now. The next video is already in production. 5 perennials that trial gardens actually endorse. Plants that perform in year 1 and still look exactly right in year 15. Plants I would put in the ground tomorrow without a moment of hesitation. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it. I will see you in the next one.